From LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, host of Everyday Better, an award-winning podcast dedicated to personal development. Join me every week for captivating stories and research to find more fulfillment in your work and personal life. Listen to Everyday Better on the LinkedIn Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From LinkedIn News, I'm Jessie Hempel, host of the Hello Monday podcast. Start your week with the Hello Monday podcast. We'll navigate career pivots. We'll learn where happiness fits in. Listen to Hello Monday with me, Jessie Hempel, on the LinkedIn Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to our throwback episode. In our throwback episodes, we are reintroducing you to some of our most popular episodes. This is great for new listeners who want to learn more about the work we've done in the past, and it's a great refresher if you've been a listener for a long time. Enjoy. How about you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Kwame, thanks for that question. But before I begin, I'd first like to thank you for all the hard work and contributions that you make to women in the community and in businesses in our area. You know, a heartfelt thank you for being a man who walks the talk. So I first wanted to say that before we began our discussion.
Well, thank you. Now I am going to make sure that my wife and my mom listen to this episode in particular.
Absolutely. Well, Kwame, what I do day in and day out, my title is President and CEO of Women for Economic and Leadership Development, and we call it WELD for short. You know, to put it briefly, I'm responsible for building confidence, connections, and skill sets for women in our communities and the communities that we serve so that they can advance in their leadership ranks, grow their businesses, and really achieve their career aspirations. Fundamentally, that's what I do.
That's phenomenal. And how long have you been doing this?
I've actually been employed by WELD for 7 years. So on a formal basis, I've been supporting women for 7 years in this role. But prior to it, supporting women has always been a passion of mine. So I had volunteered for WELD, and even in a previous career, I was heavily engaged in mentoring and helping women navigate through the corporate ranks.
Nice. And your background is really interesting because your undergrad was in physics and then you got into the financial services industry, right?
Yes, it's a lot of dots in between and to get from point A to point B, but essentially my heart has always been in math and science. I like the quantitative. I like learning and the discovery. But I lived in a community several years ago when I just got out of college, and if you could add 2 + 2, they were trying to convince you to take the actuarial exams. And that's how I made that leap from physics to actuarial to the business world.
Wow, that is incredibly impressive. Well done.
Thank you.
So for those people out there who don't know about WELD and are interested, this is your chance to make a pitch. What are the benefits of being in WELD?
Thank you. You know, fundamentally, the value to being in WELD is developing those key connections in the community that's going to help you advance your career, grow your business. People will tell you it's not so much your resume that gets you in the door. It's people who know you, who are willing to speak your name, that help you get in the door. And your resume is the one that keeps you in the room, if you will. WELD develops those skill sets for you, develops those connections, and it's a real community of support of finding like-minded women who want to pay it back and help the women in the communities that we serve progress.
Yep, I'm a fan. I just got involved with WELD earlier this year, and thankfully I was able to connect with you, and I'm excited to serve more with what I can offer.
Thank you. You know, with WELD, the reason why we do this, you could say it's the right thing to do, you know, and everything around fairness and equity. But the reality, Kwame, is when you have more women in top leadership, companies financially outperform others with fewer or no women in leadership. And I think we all understand the economic clout of women as consumers. So it's important to have women at the table as companies are developing strategy, as communities are trying to address fundamental societal issues. You know, if you have a team that doesn't include women, you're missing half the piece that you need to succeed.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you are doing the work that you do, and we will continue to support however we can. One of the things that you said that really resonated with me was the fact that WELD helps to give women the key connections they need to have professional and personal success. And one of the things that I know you've been able to do successfully is use key connections through collaboration with other partners in the community. And I'd like to try and break down the negotiation aspect of collaborating between organizations. In your experience, how has collaboration helped Weld grow?
Collaboration has been the key reason, I believe, why Weld is where it is today. Fundamentally, unless you're an almighty Fortune 10 business, if you will, it's very difficult for small organizations to be all things to all people and have the necessary resources to deliver on its mission. So from the very beginning, when I joined Weld as an employee, it was about identifying where are we strong, what things do we want to actually deliver ourselves, versus where do we really need to seek out the strengths and partnerships of other organizations in the community to further our mission. So as we look to develop partnerships and collaborative efforts in the community, we're looking for organizations that complement what we do, that believe in our mission, and that have missions that are reinforcing and reciprocating, if you will. And because of that, we've been able to stretch our thin resources much further than if we had tried to tackle many of these issues by ourselves.
And so what I'm seeing is that this is intentional. This is really strategic.
Absolutely. As you look at where women are in leadership ranks in our businesses, the nonprofit sector, elected officials, the problem is, and the opportunity is bigger than any one organization. There is so much work to be done that there's no room for organizations to compete for that work, if you will. When you look at advancing women, it's going to take all of us working together in order to move the needle, not competing for and viewing it as a zero-sum game. So from a strategic standpoint, we've sought out organizations that are strong where we don't have the bench strength or the skill sets or the resources in order to deliver on.
That's brilliant. That's really smart. And what's really interesting about it to me is the fact that in order to effectively create this strategy, it required a level of humility and vulnerability that you needed to identify those weaknesses.
Absolutely. There are so many different levels of strategic partnership. You might have the ones that are merely cross-marketing of events, but the real return on investment, if you will, is when you start to embed in each other's organizations and each other's strategies and cross-pollinate. That's when you really get that return on investment. So, Weld is wonderful at developing women's leadership skills and their community connections. How do we work with organizations that focus on helping women business owners run their business? Well, that's the perfect opportunity for Weld to collaborate with this organization. We have large corporate members who could be potential customers of this women's organization that has all these women business owners. These women business owners in turn can come in and mentor and coach and consult with our members. So it's a deeper, richer relationship, if you will, if you start to scratch below the surface and doing the no-brainer things like cross-marketing events.
And so now getting beyond the strategy, because the strategy is brilliant, let's talk a little bit about the negotiation strategy in particular. Because now once you've done your due diligence and found your weaknesses and then found complementary organizations, how do you begin that negotiation? How do you start those talks?
The first thing is to go in with the mind that you want everyone to win and that it's not a win-lose situation. Understanding with clarity, crystal clear, what the other organization needs in order to further its mission, and really be thoughtful about how our organization can support them and their mission. It begins with that. It's not about going in and trying to dominate a conversation and saying this is what Weld really needs or this is what my organization really needs. If you walk in with wanting to be a true partner and wanting to have a reciprocating relationship, you'll take the time to listen and understand the needs of the other organization before you start trying to go down the path of getting your own needs met.
Brilliant. I had a huge smile on my face as you were answering this because you just hit on almost all of the negotiation fundamentals here. And especially when you talked about the mindset too, because I think a lot of people rush into these conversations, they're ill prepared, and they focus too much on the tactics that they're going to use at the table and not what's going on in their own mind. But the very first thing you said was a mindset issue, shifting your perspective on what a negotiation should be and what the outcome should be.
And taking the time to cultivate those relationships before you begin to think about transacting business. You know, some of the relationships and the strategic partnerships that Weld has in the communities that it serves have been years in the making of getting to know the leadership of the different organizations, understanding their programs, building confidence that you are a person that is committed to your word and deed. Starting with that relationship first, if you get the relationship right, the transacting of the business is so much easier to accomplish.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/marketer. Terms and conditions apply.
Absolutely. And the simple word that comes to mind is patience. In almost every situation, we need to suspend our agenda and put the people first. And that's what you said. You focus on their needs, getting to understand them thoroughly, and learning how you can be of assistance. And you come with value first before even making that ask.
Absolutely. And having a true desire to want to learn about another organization or about the individual that's in front of you. One of the things I most enjoy doing is, going to meet someone for a cup of coffee and hearing their leadership journey, how they got to where they are today, and identifying 2 or 3 ways, easy ways where I can help that person or advocate for that person without expecting anything in return. Nothing at all. And sometimes, years down the road, someone will say, I met you for coffee. You may not even remember it, but I remember you telling me about XYZ. I'd like to bring this opportunity to your organization or help this corporate member join your organization. If you invest in relationships, that's where the return comes from.
Absolutely. And generosity really is the key. One of the most popular books on negotiation was written by Adam Grant recently. It's called Give and Take, and it's all about the positive effects of generosity and like you said, giving without expectation of getting something in return. And during those conversations, when you learn what makes them tick, when you learn their needs and desires for their organization, how do you propose those things to them? Do you wait for them to ask, or do you begin giving suggestions?
Immediately in that conversation, if there is a name that I can refer them to or an organization to refer them to, individuals in Weld to connect them with, I begin as soon as I see that the opportunity is there. Sometimes it may involve my doing some additional follow-up, and sometimes it may be that, I see where your challenge is. I need some time to think about it. And it may be a couple months down the road where bingo, I light upon the right individual that they're looking for or opportunity that they're looking for.
That makes sense. Now, one of the other things that makes this strategy so powerful is the fact that it's genuine. You genuinely want to help because your vision and goals are aligned for the most part. And then the next part is the fact that you do a lot of the heavy lifting way before the actual negotiation, or at least I should say what most people would characterize as a negotiation, where you're actually making the ask. You've invested so much into the relationship already that the ask becomes almost perfunctory.
Exactly. It's mostly coming in and doing that final handshake.
Right. Have you ever had an experience where you saw a powerful opportunity to connect or collaborate with an organization, and after cultivating the relationship, you made the ask and then you experienced some resistance?
I have to think about that. There have been times I've experienced, I won't necessarily say resistance, but mainly concern of how will it impact that organization's ability to garner resources. In the nonprofit world, it's about sponsorships, memberships, and people feeling like, there's a limited sum of corporate dollars available for giving. And if we partner with this organization, then does that mean we're not going to be able to get our resources because it's been given over to others? And so my perspective with that is helping them understand how to enlarge the pie. If you look at a 6-inch pie, if you will, and you're struggling, you're all fighting for a slice of that pie. Envision instead building a 12-inch pie and dividing up those slices. You all get the same relative proportion of the pie, but the pie is bigger. And when you collaborate with people constructively and try to enlarge the pie, you can all get your slice of the pie, but it's a bigger pie. So you're getting more.
Right. And that is one of the quintessential elements of collaborative negotiation. You're collaborating even before the official collaboration begins because you're working with them to create a deal that is beneficial to all parties involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one of the things you said earlier, I want to really focus in on because people might say, oh, this isn't that important, but I think semantics matter at this point, because you say if there's ever resistance, you try to help them understand the benefits to them or the benefits to the community. What you didn't say is I convince them or I argue with them, because it's not an imposition of your will. You're working together, and it's an information game. You're learning, and then sometimes you're teaching. There's no convincing, and approaching it that way alleviates pressure from both sides.
Absolutely. Time and timing is everything. When you try to rush people through a decision, people then begin to dig their heels in. No one likes to be rushed through a decision, if you will. And timing is everything. If an organization is dealing with a number of priorities that are really all encompassing, that timing is not good for them. So it's time and timing.
Right. And what's interesting on that point is that you can bring forward a great deal to somebody, and just because of the timing, they'll say no. Or because of the timing, even if it is a great deal at that time, they won't have the cognitive capacity to analyze it thoroughly. And when people feel threatened or pressured, they're going to go with the safest answer, which is going to be no.
Absolutely.
Congratulations! You've just joined an elite club. By listening to a full episode, you're now officially on the Negotiate Anything team. So welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episodes of the show. The best things in life lie on the other side of difficult conversations. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep getting better. Your relationships will improve, your career will soar, and you'll have the confidence you need to get the most out of these crucial conversations. Again, thank you for joining the team. We're excited to have you, and I will see you in the next episode. I'll catch you later.